Hello, hello. So, I am just tuning in because quite frequently I will get a random urge to write. And when I get these urges, it will literally be at the most random times. Like I'll be doing my dishes and I'll get this hit and I'll know immediately that I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to go to my journal and I just start writing. And like I said, this happens quite frequently, and I have a bunch of journals, but my most recent journal is just kind of really that, like, downloads that kind of will hit me and I'll just have to stop everything I'm doing and write. And so a lot of times what comes through is related to the gene keys, because I work a lot with the gene keys and I'm learning a lot about the language of the gene keys. So sometimes I genuinely feel as though I'm channeling like the spirit of the gene keys. And so something that came through yesterday, I'm pretty much just going to read off what I wrote, because as I'm writing, a lot of times what is being written doesn't feel like it's really coming from me. It feels as though it's being channeled and coming from my higher self or just something bigger than me. And so typically when it comes through, it actually comes through pretty clear and concise. And then occasionally I'll sit with it and kind of reflect like my own thoughts on it, which maybe I'll do in this video. But what this video is going to be about is the gene keys and manifestation, and specifically related to the gene key 41, and then also the gene key 42. And so in the I Ching, which the gene keys is based on, the 41 is known as decrease, and the 42 is known as increase. And so just by knowing this information, we can actually see that before an increase, there's a decrease, comes a decrease. And so how this relates to manifestation is that the entire process of manifesting is actually less about doing and more about becoming. And so to step into a desired manifestation, one must remove anything from their field that is not aligned with that desire. So this could be people, thoughts, habits, patterns. And when you let go of what is not aligned with your highest self, you will naturally begin to express and move towards your highest timeline. And so essentially, it's a process of getting out of your own way. And the 41st gene key has a shadow of fantasy, a gift, the gift of anticipation, and the city of emanation. And so the difference between fantasy and anticipation is that fantasy doesn't take action or align its choices with its desired manifestation or with its highest timeline. So when you're in fantasy, you're simply just dreaming about it. This also reminds me of a Sanskrit word, the Sanskrit word prajnaparta, which literally one of the translations is crimes against wisdom. And so when I think about this in regards to fantasy, this is like what happens when, you know, your intuition is sort of guiding you towards something, or you have this inner knowing, or you just, maybe it's not an inner, maybe you don't associate it with intuition or an inner knowing, but there's something within you that is wanting to move towards something else, a new way of being. And you know that in order to get there, you have to shift certain patterns and habits in your life. And a lot of times, personally speaking, it's like I'll get to a point when I know a certain habit, for example, is not serving me, and I know after I do it that I don't feel good, or it doesn't make me feel aligned to my highest timeline, or it's not serving me in some way, and I'm aware of it. Whether it be a symptom that comes out of it, an emotion that comes from it. So Prajnaparta is when you continue, when you know that certain habits, patterns, people, situations are not serving your highest good, and yet you keep repeating it. It's kind of like, as a simple example, it's like if there's a certain food that really upsets your stomach every time you eat it, you know it makes you sick, but you continue to eat it. That's Prajnaparta, crime against wisdom. So that to me is really related to the shadow of this gene key. And then when we move into the gift of anticipation, this gift taps into the wisdom of the higher self and aligns its choices and actions to the wisdom received from the higher self, which allows for the unfoldment of life to manifest based on the highest love, the highest truth, and according to the highest divine plan. And so in order to kind of get to this space, again, it's a decrease. So to align to our highest self and our highest timeline, we must get deeper into the body and move out of the ego mind. And this is because wisdom lives in the body and is accessed in the body. And so we actually have we have different wisdom centers that are operating. So we have a wisdom center like the third eye, the heart, the solar plexus, and in the sacral. And really, truly, all of these centers, these wisdom centers operate together. Like they're one direct channel. So the more that we tap into these centers in our body, like when we come into our body and we start to really operate out of our sacral, like we live in our legs and in our sacral, which many of us are actually living from the throat up because technology, and we live in such a fast-paced world that most people feel pretty detached from their bodies and really are just like operating out of this space. When we start to move deeper into the body, we tap into this deeper wisdom that lives in the body, which then will inform the mind, which will allow us to make better choices. So it all operates together. So when I say like we need to get out of the mind, it's not like we need to leave the mind completely behind, but for many of us, we're so focused on the mind and we live in the mind to the detriment of the wisdom that is coming through in the body, and that is always present in the body if we just go there and listen. That's really what I'm referring to, is the importance of moving into the body so that all of these wisdom centers are communicating with each other. So when we don't come into the body, when we stay strictly in the mind, many times the manifestations that come from the ego mind, that come specifically from the mind, will be surface level at best. So even if, in this mainstream manifestation world, it's like, oh, you can manifest anything you want. You can manifest that specific person. You can have this, you can have that, you can have all these very specific things. A lot of times what happens is like, okay, maybe you can manifest that specific thing, but is it really for your highest and best? If yes, then like if you truly received that in your body, that like that is a heart-centered manifestation, that is a body-centered manifestation, then like, beautiful. But a lot of times if we think we know what we need, or we want something, but sometimes the things that we want aren't actually good for us, it's more coming out of like, it comes from our upbringing, or sometimes our trauma, from our ancestral line, and it's not always rooted in our highest good and our highest timeline. And so, I feel like, again, my experience is in the past, when I kind of was really into like the law of attraction and The Secret, when that all came out years and years and years ago, it was like, oh, well, you can literally manifest anything you want. And so it's like, oh, I really want that person. And maybe I feel like in my body, I knew sometimes that like the people I wanted to be with, it was like I wanted to be with them because it fit this story that I was like putting myself in. It fit into the mold, it fit into the box that I thought my life should be like, in order to fit into society, in order to be cool, in order to feel accepted. But like a lot of times my body knew when I was around certain people, like I would intuitively feel in my body like, oh, something doesn't feel right. But I would go ahead and I would keep, doing my little manifestation rituals, and then I would finally get the person, and it would be like, oh, like I don't even want this person. So again, surface level at best, when it's strictly coming from the mind, the ego mind. So what we need to do is begin to decondition from the mind and start to ground into the body. We need to come back into the body in order to tap into intuition and manifest from that space of intuition, which means aligning our choices and actions with the inner guidance and wisdom that we receive. And this is also very much related to the Gene Key 48 and the Gene Key 57, which are two keys all about being present in the body moment to moment and living from the wisdom of the body. So basically, all of this to say is that there is a higher intelligence operating through the being. And when one attunes to this intelligence, which can be accessed in stillness, just in general, slowing down. We are chronically stressed and moving at such a fast pace in our modern society that connecting to nature, slowing down, practicing breath work, dance, anything that kind of brings us back into our body, I'm an Ayurvedic counselor, so adopting an Ayurvedic lifestyle. These are all just examples of how to come back to the wisdom of the body. And when we do this, we will more readily surrender to this intelligence that is always flowing through us. And we can allow this intelligence to be a guiding force in our life. And so we're really aligning to divine will. And it reminds me of this quote that I've seen a bunch is, "Your will be done, not mine, in me and through me." And so the city of the Gene Key 56 is actually divine will. And so you can look into that. But yeah, so it's like this emanation, this city of the 41 is like when you completely surrender to this divine intelligence, you literally emanate divinity. You become an emanation of divinity, but it requires getting out of your own way. It requires getting out of the mind and thinking that you have complete control over life, when really there's a higher plan, and your soul knows of this higher plan, and your soul is always guiding you along this higher plan and wants to ascend you into these higher timelines, these higher blueprints. But we must get out of our own way. We must connect to this inner space in order to hear the guidance, and then align our choices with that guidance, and really just, it naturally happens. So it's more of a process of excavation of, okay, this is where my intuition is guiding me, and this is where I'm at now. So it's really good to take stock of like, okay, where do I feel as though my intuition is guiding me? And a good question to ask could be like, if I had absolutely no limitations in my life, what would I be doing? How would I be? Who would I be? Like, when you can tap in and ask that question and like really listen, and feel like clarity about it, then you can sort of start to see and take stock and be like, okay, so this is where I feel in my heart that I want to go. This is a direction that I feel that if I had absolutely nothing stopping me, like this is what I would be doing. And then you can sort of look at your life now and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing now, and these are the choices I'm making now, and this is what I'm doing, and see how aligned these two paths are. And then the excavation process is kind of about like taking that stock and then seeing, okay, like what is not aligned with this highest timeline? What is not aligned with my heart's truth? And maybe I can't just excavate it all immediately, but is there maybe one or two things that like I could start to kind of remove from my life that would bring me closer to this timeline? And that's really kind of how this manifestation process works. It's not like you have to do all of these things. It's more about unmasking, taking away that which is not resonant or aligned with where you're going. But again, it's not coming from a place of the ego mind. It's not it's not coming from the ego. It's coming from a place of inner knowing, which requires coming into the body, requires turning inward, requires giving yourself time and space to sit with yourself, to reflect, to meditate, to do anything, literally anything that brings you inward and allows you to connect to your heart or even to your sacral. Like, I really like to go into the womb space, and whether you have a womb or not, just going into the lower belly area, the area below the belly button, and like sitting in there, like this is the area of creation, and like feeling in like what wants to be created from this space. Or, you know, going to the heart, like what is my heart yearning for? What is my heart asking for? And even like breathing from the heart down to the womb, back from the womb up to the heart, kind of like doing like a breath work that where you're connecting both the heart and the womb together. That can be really powerful. And like, what is my creation, my like womb space and my love space really wanting to manifest? And then that's when you feel tapped into that space is when then you can really start looking at your life and seeing, okay, what do I need to let go of in order to move towards that? So when we connect to our hearts and we connect to love, we begin to trust in something bigger than ourselves. And like I said, this requires slowing down, turning inward, and tuning in. And when we cultivate trust, we let go of the reins and we allow the ego to take a back seat. And so we become co-creators by means of the choices we make. And yet beyond that, we start to awaken and understand and open ourselves up to a bigger blueprint and a divine plan, the sacred geometry and sacred mathematics. And so aligning to the heart and trusting the heart, listening to the heart, following the guidance of the heart really aligns us to this plan. And when you surrender to this love, and when you really start to tap in to the body and to the heart, to these wisdom centers, you begin to feel in your body this different vibration. You become lighter. And the only way that I can describe it is when I feel it, it's like I just feel so held. And I feel so unstoppable, really, and empowered. It's very powerful. And I don't always, I'm not operating from that space all the time. It's definitely what I aspire to operate from at all times. But it's a learning process. It's a lot of trial and error, and it takes a lot of courage and compassion for the self, and a willingness to show up and be with the self and to hold the self in unconditional love, and to not shame the self, and to not make certain emotions wrong or bad compared to other emotions. It's really about learning to hold all of the self. And then it also comes down to the regulation of the nervous system, which is really everything. And so, yeah, perhaps I will share more tools for the regulation of the nervous system and just ways that I tune in to myself and tap into this space of knowing. But when you surrender to love, life naturally flows and everything becomes possible. And yeah. So that's what came through. And I hope that this can inspire even just one person out there to know that there is something much bigger than what our egos can ever comprehend. And I think we live in a world where capitalism and consumerism take precedence over connecting to the self, slowing down, connecting to community, connecting to the divine. And because of this, I feel like there's like this collective belief that we must always be striving and doing, and what the Gene Keys teaches us, what the I Ching teaches us, is that before we can actually really grow and expand and increase, there has to be a decrease. And so in order to really manifest our highest timeline, we have to be willing to prune away anything in our reality that is not aligned with that highest timeline. And this requires a lot of self-honesty and self-responsibility, and a willingness to come back to the body and come back to the wisdom of the body and to trust in the wisdom of the body. So I hope that this will serve, and let me know how you feel about this information, if you've ever heard of the Gene Keys, if you have a favorite Gene Key, if you want to know more. Yeah, I'm here. I'm on this journey with you all, and I just really desire to grow and to ascend and to step into deeper states of love and truth with you all. So, much love.